I knew it the moment he walked in. This wasn't going to end well. Day one, under the new leadership, the mahogany conference table gleamed like it was ready for an execution. And judging by the smirk on Ethan's face, my boss's freshly promoted son, it probably was. He leaned back in his father's old chair, shoes up, tie loose, trying to look like some tech visionary instead of the spoiled legacy hire everyone knew he was. "All right, team," he began, voice dripping with performative confidence. "Things are going to change around here. We're running lean, agile, no more outdated processes. Translation, chaos, but with branding." I sat there quietly, fingers curled around my mug, watching him pace like he was auditioning for a leadership TED Talk. His eyes swept across the room. Finance, operations, R&D, and landed on me. I'd been there 11 years, built our first logistics algorithm from scratch, held the team together through 3 mergers and 1 near bankruptcy. But none of that mattered now. I wasn't his person. "If you don't like the new rules," Ethan said, smile curling like smoke, "there's the door." The room froze. Someone coughed. I think I even heard the AC click louder than usual. He said it like he was testing me, waiting for me to flinch, to beg, to play the loyal veteran. Instead, I took a slow sip of my coffee and said, "Thanks for the exit strategy." You could have heard a pin drop. He blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" I smiled. That calm, unbothered kind of smile that comes from realizing you've already won a battle they don't know started yet. "You heard me." I closed my notebook, slid my laptop into my bag, and stood. I didn't raise my voice, didn't slam the door, didn't give him the satisfaction of drama. Just walked out. I could feel the eyes of my team following me. Some were shocked. Others, like my assistant Maya, looked terrified. She mouthed, "What are you doing?" as I passed. I gave her a small nod. "Stay. Observe." Outside, the early morning sun was sharp, cutting through the glass of the lobby. I walked past the reception desk, my badge still warm in my hand, and placed it neatly beside the visitor log. That was the moment, the click of the plastic card on polished marble, when my career at Holland & Gray officially ended. But my story? That was just beginning. I drove home in silence, city traffic flowing around me like a pulse. My apartment was small, cluttered with half-finished prototypes and coffee-stained notebooks. The kind of space where ideas grow wild, and occasionally dangerous. I opened my laptop, logged into my encrypted cloud, and stared at the folder labeled Atlas. The company thought Atlas was just an R&D experiment, a dead-end logistics simulator I'd tinkered with off the clock. What they didn't know was that Atlas was alive. A fully operational optimization engine capable of predicting disruptions before they happened. Weather, supply shortages, even political blockades. It didn't just respond, it anticipated. And every line of code was mine. I'd built it after hours, using my own equipment, my own funding, documented everything, backed up on multiple servers, time-stamped, notarized, witnessed, legal foresight disguised as obsession. When Ethan told me to leave, I didn't panic. I'd already seen this coming the moment his father announced succession planning. Ethan didn't want experienced engineers. He wanted yes men and cheap interns who'd call him a genius. I just hadn't expected the fall to come this fast. So when he handed me the door, I took it and brought my blueprints with me. I spent that first week off-grid, mostly working out of a quiet co-working space near the river. Cheap rent, good Wi-Fi. Nobody asked questions. The place smelled faintly of burnt espresso and ambition. I liked it. By Wednesday, my attorney, a no-nonsense IP specialist named Carla, had already filed the provisional patent for Atlas under my name. Not the company's. Mine. Carla looked at me over her glasses. "You understand what this means, right? Once they realize what you've done, they'll come after you." I smiled. Let them. Because here's the thing. Ethan thought power came from titles, offices, and inherited authority. But real power? It lives in documentation, in data trails, in proof. He could have my old cubicle, my parking space, even my ergonomic chair. but he didn't own my mind or my work. That Friday, I sent a short email to the company's general counsel. Per our previous employment terms, please note I am asserting independent ownership over my intellectual property developed outside company resources. Documentation available upon request. Lisa Wren. No threats, no emotion, just fact. They didn't respond. Not yet. But silence in corporate law is never peace. It's pressure building. And deep down, I knew Ethan, with his arrogance and impulsive bravado, wouldn't leave it there. He'd go digging. He'd push back. He'd try to reclaim what he thought was his father's empire. Only this time, he'd find that the empire had already been rebuilt. And it didn't belong to him anymore. I thought leaving would bring silence. But the silence that followed wasn't peace. It was pressure. The kind that hums in the air before a storm. 3 days after I sent that email to legal, I was sitting in the co-working space, half listening to the sound of the espresso machine hissing like a bad temper when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Lisa Wren? A male voice asked. Yes. This is Thomas Reed, corporate counsel for Holland and Gray. I'd like to discuss your recent message. There it was, sooner than I expected. Of course, I said. Email works best. I think a conversation would be faster. Then I'll record it, I replied. Silence. Then a clipped, we'll be in touch. Click. I leaned back and smiled. They were nervous. That was good. Nervous people make mistakes. By Thursday, Ethan finally reached out, via a forwarded email chain from his assistant. It was short, arrogant, and exactly what I expected. Lisa, your work during your employment remains company property. Any attempt to claim otherwise will be treated as a breach of contract. Ethan Gray. No greeting, no signature. Just digital chest thumping. I read it twice, took a sip of my cold coffee, and typed a reply. Ethan, my work done during employment is indeed your property. Fortunately, what you're trying to relaunch wasn't. Lisa. Then I attached the provisional patent confirmation from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Filed, accepted, time-stamped. I didn't get a response after that, but I didn't need one. Because by Friday morning, the whispers had already started. Maya texted me first. They're calling it Helix. You might want to see this. Attached was a screenshot from the company's internal newsletter. Helix, the next evolution of predictive logistics. They were relaunching Atlas, my system. Same interface, same language. Even the same placeholder text on the demo screen, text I'd left intentionally when I walked out. But here's the part they didn't know. I'd never uploaded the full logic. Atlas wasn't just an algorithm. It was layered architecture. Each function referenced a separate encrypted key stored locally on my private drive. Without those keys, the code would execute, but not learn. It would look functional, right up until it faced real data. Then it would break, beautifully and completely. I didn't design it to sabotage. I designed it to protect, and now it was about to do exactly that. The following week, the company announced a live Helix demo for investors. I found the stream online. Of course, they made it public. Ethan stood on stage in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car. Behind him, a slide glowed with words like revolutionary, adaptive, proprietary technology. I actually laughed. Proprietary. Sure. He started the presentation with practiced charm, talking about innovation, synergy, and a new era of smart logistics. His voice trembled just slightly when he said his team had developed Helix. Then came the live demo. A world map appeared on screen, dotted with simulated supply routes. Colored lines pulsed as the system optimized them in real time. The crowd murmured approval for about 20 seconds. Then the red lights appeared. First one, then 3, then the entire map started blinking with error flags. The projected graph behind him flatlined. A loud system alert echoed through the hall. Error. Logic reference not found. The audience went silent. Ethan froze. A technician rushed onto the stage, whispering frantically in his ear. He nodded, tried to play it off. "Just a minor configuration issue," he said, smiling too wide. We'll restart." They didn't. The restart triggered another cascade of red. The demo collapsed in front of 200 people and a live stream audience. That error message, the one in red, bold letters, it wasn't random, because I'd written it myself. Property of Lisa Wren. Unauthorized execution detected. That message wasn't in the codebase. It was buried 3 layers deep inside the fallback logic, invisible to anyone who hadn't built it. I hadn't meant for it to ever surface. But when they copied my architecture without the keys, it triggered automatically. A digital signature that couldn't be erased. I sat in my small co-working booth, coffee going cold again, watching Ethan's face lose color on live stream. He stammered, turned to the side, whispered to someone off camera. The feed cut a minute later. My phone buzzed nonstop for the next hour. Maya. 2 developers I used to mentor. Even one from finance. "Lisa, what did you do? They're saying your code sabotaged the product. Security's freaking out. Ethan's losing it." I didn't reply. Because I hadn't sabotaged anything. They'd sabotaged themselves. That night, I walked by the river, the city lights flickering across the water like broken reflections. I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't even smiling. Just thinking. A year ago, I would have stayed. Tried to reason. Tried to fix things from the inside. But I'd learned that in corporate wars, logic doesn't save you. Documentation does. And now they were learning that lesson too. Somewhere in that glass tower, Ethan was realizing the truth. Atlas was never his father's legacy to inherit. It was mine. And this was just the beginning. By Monday morning, the story had already started leaking out. Not publicly, not yet. But internally, the air around Holland and Gray was crackling with fear. The failed Helix demo had been a humiliation no PR spin could fix. Investors were calling. Clients were asking questions no one could answer. And Ethan? He was invisible. Maya sent me a message at 7:12 a.m. They've called in legal. Full audit of all software assets. They're pulling logs, commit histories, everything. I stared at my phone for a long moment, then set it down beside my coffee. I'd expected this, but not this soon. It meant the panic had reached the boardroom. And panic in a boardroom always leads to mistakes. By noon, I got another message. This one from a blocked number. "Ms. Wren, this is Karen Duvall, outside counsel for Holland and Gray. I'd like to schedule a brief call to discuss your involvement with certain development materials." There it was, the polite voice of a lawyer trying to sound calm while sitting on a grenade. I agreed to a video call that afternoon. Her background was the typical corporate setup. Neat desk, law books behind her, calm face that didn't match the tension in her eyes. "Lisa," she began, folding her hands. "We're reviewing internal inconsistencies regarding a system called Helix. We've discovered a code attribution conflict that appears unusual." "Unusual?" I repeated. "That's one word for it." She didn't smile. "Some of the modules bear your digital signature." "They should," I said evenly. "They're mine." She hesitated. "Were these materials developed while employed at Holland and Gray?" "No," I said. "All development occurred off-site, on personal equipment, with notarized documentation and third-party witnesses. I can provide copies." Karen took a deep breath, the kind lawyers take when they realize their client is in trouble. "You're aware this could cause serious repercussions for the company?" "Yes," I said softly. "That's why I warned them." She blinked. "Warned them?" "I emailed legal 2 weeks ago before the demo." They chose not to respond. Karen's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes did. Quiet realization. "I'll need those documents," she said finally. "You'll have them within the hour." When the call ended, I sent the entire file set. Patent filings, timestamps, Git commit logs, notarized witness statements, even screen captures showing my original development environment, proof stacked higher than corporate denial. That night, my phone buzzed again. Maya. Ethan just stormed out of the building. Board called an emergency meeting. People are saying the patents might be valid. They are valid, I texted back. Lisa, what's going to happen? I stared at the message for a while, my fingers hovering over the screen. What always happens when the truth finally shows up? The next morning, I got another call, this time from someone I hadn't heard from in months. David Chan, the company's CTO before Ethan's father retired. Lisa, he said quietly, I heard what's happening. I just wanted to say, you did the right thing. They've been playing with fire for years. His voice carried that weary respect only people who've survived enough corporate battles can offer. They're going to come after me, David, I said. They'll try, he replied. But they don't have the footing. Ethan didn't just break internal policy. He violated the IP protection clause his own father implemented. That's ironclad. I almost laughed. The same clause I'd helped draft 5 years earlier. The same one that now protected me. By Wednesday, the audit findings reached the board. A friend in accounting forwarded me a copy of an internal memo. Anonymously, of course. It was short and brutal. Preliminary review indicates that proprietary code used in the Helix system originated from external, independently patented sources. Immediate suspension of all related projects recommended pending legal resolution. In other words, Helix is dead. Ethan's silence became its own rumor. Some said he was in meetings with crisis PR firms. Others said he'd been advised to take temporary leave. Whatever it was, his name disappeared from company announcements overnight. And yet, I didn't feel triumphant. Just still. That Friday, I went for a walk near the river again. It was cold, the kind of cold that clears your head. I stopped at the same cafe I'd worked in after I left, ordered my usual coffee, and sat by the window watching people hurry by. For years, I'd lived for that company. Missed holidays, worked weekends, built systems that saved millions. I believed loyalty meant safety. But the last few weeks had proved something I wish I'd learned sooner. In corporate life, loyalty isn't protection. It's leverage. For them, not for you. That realization wasn't bitter. It was freeing. As I sat there, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Maya. Lisa. They want to talk settlement. I heard from HR. Karen's preparing a call. Settlement. The word tasted strange. I typed back, tell them I'll listen. But only if Ethan's in the room. There was a pause before her reply. You really think he'll agree to that? I smiled to myself. The city lights reflected in the glass. He doesn't have a choice anymore. Because the truth wasn't mine or his anymore. It was on record. And once something's documented, no amount of arrogance can erase it. The storm hadn't passed. It was just beginning to rain. They scheduled the meeting for Friday at 10 a.m. sharp. A mutual discussion regarding IP resolution. The email said, as if polite phrasing could soften what was about to happen. I'd been in enough of these to know how it would start. Calm introductions, legal disclaimers, then the slow pivot toward intimidation. But this time, I wasn't the one on the defensive. The Zoom window opened to 4 small squares. Karen, the company's outside counsel, looking exhausted but composed. 2 board representatives and Ethan Gray himself, sitting in his father's old office. The same office where I'd once spent nights fixing code while he was still in business school. He leaned forward, trying to project authority. Lisa, he said flatly, thank you for agreeing to speak. Of course, I replied, matching his tone. It's always nice to talk to people who used to sign my paychecks. Karen's voice broke the tension. Let's keep this professional, please. She began with formalities, acknowledgement of the audit findings, the potential overlap between my patents and the Helix system, the pending review from the U.S. Patent Office. Then came the proposal. Holland and Gray is prepared to offer a settlement, she said. An acknowledgement of contribution and financial compensation in exchange for full transfer of the Helix-related intellectual property. I let the words hang in the air. Ethan's jaw was tight, his impatience obvious. How much compensation? I asked. Karen glanced at her notes. $200,000. I smiled, not kindly. That's cute. Ethan frowned. Lisa, let's not pretend this is worth millions. It's a logistics algorithm. It's a predictive logistics system that your company tried to relaunch without understanding, I said calmly, and then publicly humiliated itself with. He shifted in his seat, glancing at Karen, who looked like she wanted to disappear into her blazer. I don't want your money, I said. I want acknowledgement, written, public, and filed with the USPTO, confirming the intellectual property belongs to me. That's not, Ethan started, but Karen raised a hand. Lisa, that's a substantial request. The board may not approve a public statement like that. Then they can explain to the patent office why their internal audit confirmed I own the code, I said, and why their VP ignored a cease and desist warning before the Helix demo. Karen blinked. You have documentation of that warning? I do, I said. Email timestamps, legal proof of receipt. I'm sure your forensics team already found it. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with unspoken panic. Ethan's face went pale, but he masked it quickly, trying for that boardroom confidence again. Lisa, he said slowly, this isn't how things work. You don't just walk away with proprietary systems. I tilted my head. I didn't walk away with them, Ethan. You tried to walk away with mine. Karen exhaled softly, like she knew the call was already lost. Lisa, she said carefully, if we issue formal acknowledgement, that will effectively end Helix and any projects derived from it. Are you aware of the implications? I am, I said, and maybe that's the point. The company needs to learn that innovation doesn't come from intimidation. Ethan leaned closer to the camera, his voice tight. You're enjoying this, aren't you? No, I said truthfully, but I am finished being silent. For a long moment, no one spoke. Karen finally said, I'll confer with the board and get back to you within 48 hours. Take your time, I replied. Just remember the patent clock doesn't stop ticking. I ended the call before anyone could respond. The room around me was quiet except for the faint hum of my laptop fan. My hands were steady, but my chest felt heavy. Not from fear, but from finality. I'd spent years building that company's future, only to be erased by someone who believed titles outweighed talent. And yet, here I was, rewriting the ending. At noon, my phone buzzed again. Maya. You should have seen the board after the call. They looked terrified. Ethan left mid-meeting. Karen stayed behind with the CFO. Rumor is they're drafting the statement. I typed back. They'll do what's right eventually. You think he'll survive this? She asked. No one survives pretending to own what they don't understand, I replied. That evening I went for another walk by the river. It was windy, the kind that makes the city lights shimmer on the water. I thought about all the people like Ethan. Inheritors, not builders. The kind who think control is the same as creation. And I realized something that felt both sad and freeing. People like him never really build anything. They just rearrange what others make until it breaks. My phone buzzed again. An email this time from Karen. Lisa, please find attached a draft acknowledgement for your review. Pending final signatures, Holland and Gray will confirm your sole ownership of the Atlas patents. The company will also withdraw all references to the Helix project from its public materials. I read it twice, then exhaled slowly. The storm, after weeks of pressure, had finally broken. The company hadn't just surrendered a project. They'd admitted the truth. But what I didn't know yet, what none of us knew, was that Ethan wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The statement went public on a Tuesday morning. Simple, clinical, and exactly what I'd asked for. Holland and Gray acknowledges that the predictive logistics framework known internally as Helix originated from independent intellectual property developed by former employee Lisa Wren. The company has ceased all use of related materials and withdrawn any public references to the project. No apology, no dramatics, just truth, printed in black and white. Within hours, it was everywhere. Tech news blogs, industry forums, even LinkedIn feeds filled with quiet admiration disguised as professional commentary. Rare case of a developer winning against corporate overreach. One article read. Another headline simply said, Engineer 1, Empire 0. I didn't celebrate. I just sat in my apartment, coffee in hand, rereading the statement until the words stopped feeling real. For once, silence felt peaceful, but it didn't last. 2 days later, I got a call from Maya. Her voice was shaking. Lisa, something's happening. IT found out Ethan tried to pull copies of the old Atlas files from the company archive. He used an admin override to bypass the lockout. I closed my eyes. When? Last night. Security flagged it as unauthorized access. Legal's involved. Of course he had. Ethan had always believed rules were for other people. I could almost picture it. Him sitting in that glass office, sweating under fluorescent lights, desperate to prove he still had control of something. He's not going to stop, Maya said quietly. He's blaming you for everything. I almost laughed. That's fine. I've spent my whole career being blamed for fixing other people's messes, but this time the mess wasn't mine. That evening, I got an email from Karen, the lawyer. Lisa, for your awareness, there's been a breach investigation regarding Mr. Gray's activity. The files he attempted to access were secured under the Atlas patent filings. The system flagged and logged his credentials. We'll keep you informed. Translation: they had him. 3 days later, the story broke. An internal leak? Maybe from someone in IT, maybe from someone who'd had enough. Headlines spread across the same networks that had once celebrated Helix. Holland and Gray VP under investigation for data misuse. Sources confirm unauthorized access attempt after patent settlement. The fallout was instant. The board suspended Ethan pending review. His name vanished from the leadership page within 24 hours. When Maya called again, she sounded different. Calmer, almost relieved. They walked him out this morning, she said. Security escort. No speech, no goodbye. Just gone, I sat in silence for a moment, trying to process the finality of it. It wasn't joy I felt. Just a strange, heavy quiet, the kind that comes after a long storm finally burns itself out. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said softly. I think I am. I spent that weekend cleaning my apartment, tossing old notebooks, archiving old files, deleting backup drives I no longer needed. It felt symbolic. A purge, not out of anger, but release. By Monday, I had a message waiting in my inbox. Not from Holland and Gray, from a small logistics startup in Chicago called Origin Systems. I'd met their CEO once at a conference years ago. The subject line read, "Let's talk." Their message was simple. They'd seen the article, admired the way I'd handled the situation, and wanted to license Atlas legitimately. No politics, no ego, just partnership. It took me a full hour to decide before replying. Let's talk. But this time, it's on my terms. We spoke the next day. The deal wasn't flashy, smaller than what Holland and Gray had promised years ago. But it was clean, respectful, transparent. Everything the last chapter of my career hadn't been. 2 months later, I found myself in a new office overlooking the river. Different company, same skyline. But this time, the name on the patent, the badge, the contract, all of it was mine. Sometimes I still think about Ethan. I picture him somewhere out there, scrolling through articles that used to quote him as an innovator, now replaced with headlines about misconduct and corporate theft. Maybe he learned something. Maybe he didn't. But that's not my story anymore. The last time I heard from Maya, she'd resigned too. I couldn't stay after what I saw, she told me. But I'm starting my own thing now. You taught me more than you realize that meant more than any patent ever could. I walked home that night as the city lights flickered on one by one. The streets were quiet, the air cool. I passed the Holland and Gray building out of habit. Same logo, same glass facade, but a different world now. Through the window, I could see someone new sitting in Ethan's old office. Maybe they'd learned, maybe not. But either way, it wasn't my battle anymore. I paused just long enough to whisper, "Thanks for the exit strategy," then turned and kept walking. Because in the end, that's what this had been all along. Not revenge, not rebellion, but freedom. The kind that only comes when you stop waiting for someone else to value your worth. The kind you earn, line by line, proof by proof, until the world has no choice but to see it.